Hello, Endersword here again, this time with what I believe is a Silver or Gold League game. We've got the Terran player here who is barcode named, but I know that his name is actually Shilly. So this is, I don't know why he's barcode on this account, but is. Our Zerg player is going to be Floyd, pretty simple name over here on the right-hand side of the map. This was sent to me as a PM on teamliquid.net, and he was looking for basically some advice on what to do in this game, and he also just kind of thought it was a neat game, and I kind of do too. It kind of swings back and forth a few times. So the three things that we're going to look at most during this game are, number one, the idea that your initial positioning really matters. So the way that you actually engage in a fight initially, just kind of the way that you're spread out, the initial shape of your army actually makes a lot of difference. I know there's a lot of people out there that can't really micro a lot, that just don't have the same sort of hand speed that you see in a lot of very high level or pro players, but you can often take care of that ahead of time just by making sure that your army is positioned well when you have some downtime, and then when you actually move it in or whether you take an attack, then you're in the right position that you want it to be at. We'll see that happen a couple times in this game. The second thing that we're going to look at is the idea of staying active after taking some losses. This is not the sense of losing the actual game, but taking losses in terms of your units, your workers, infrastructure, and so on. You want to make sure that you're really prioritizing how to recover and kind of getting back up on your feet by staying active, even in some cases while the attack is still happening to you. There's things that you still need to be managing. The third thing that we're going to look at is reviewing your replays and looking at times when you actually could have lost the game. So there's a lot of times that maybe you've even won a game, but you still want to look over that replay and look for weak points. Was there a point in the game that the army that you had, the defenses that you had, actually were so insufficient that if your opponent had just decided to A-move attack you right then, you probably would have lost the game. And you want to try and shore that up in your defenses. And we'll see that happen probably a couple times in this game where that could have been the case. So overall here, the Terran player going for something pretty standard. Obviously the standard wall off with a barracks. Turn that into an orbital command. In terms of scouting information, the Terran was able to see that there was a gas. Pretty much the gas was actually done, or at least underway before the pool went down. You can tell by kind of the size of that pool, or by clicking on it while you're there to see what the progress is. This usually indicates something like a roach rush, which wouldn't make a lot of sense in this game most likely, or more likely is some sort of baneling bust, that he was actually going for that. He obviously was able to see that there's no expansion here as well, so it's important to kind of take that into consideration and know what sort of defense you need for that. He does go to add an additional 2 barracks, so he's going to have a fair bit of bio out by the time anything that the Zerg player is going to do. Now, it is important, and I've said before, while it is in fact going to be a baneling nest, when you are scouting your opponent, you want to try not to convince yourself that it is going to be something, as opposed to eliminating what it is not going to be. So it's obviously not going to be a 9 pool because there were more than 9 drones out. There was a gas down. It wasn't an early enough pool. You know that it's not hatchery first because there was no hatchery first. It was these buildings first. So you can eliminate certain things. It's not going to be a triple expand, something like that. You want to eliminate what it can't be without actually nailing down what it's definitely going to be. But it tells you certain timings that you want to then maybe check on your opponent again. Maybe you want to land a scan again or send another SCV rated around 6 or 7 minutes and see, okay, that's an indicator. There's now speed out there, so I know that that's where some of the gas went to. If you can't account for some of the resources that are being mined, then you definitely want to be curious about, well, where are they actually going? Now here, try not to leave that sort of supply depot down, particularly when he knows that there are a lot of speedlings around. These would be very, very exposed if something did just decide to run up that ramp there. The command center comes by and actually sees another bunch of speedlings going down. It looks like he was going to try and take kind of a hidden expansion with that. The supply depots go up. This bunker is here and in a decent position, but is not actually full of anything. So when this attack comes up, decent spread here. Pretty good. We really only lost the supply depot and literally one Marine with a pretty low Marauder. But then he just moved commands down that ramp, gets caught in a horrible position, ends up losing half of that army. If he had just stayed up top and controlled the surface area that they were able to get, kept this bunker full, he probably could have held this completely at the ramp. So again, the initial positioning of that really does matter. And look at this, in the middle of a crisis, this is what I was talking about earlier. In the middle of a complete run by, in the middle of cleaning this up, he knows enough to continue to make this starport. He knows he needs that, and if he waits for everything to be cleaned up, it's still not cleaned up now. But he knows that he's going to need this starport and this factory out with this reactor. He knows that that technology has to come. If you waited for all this to be cleaned up, he'd be literally 40 or 50 seconds behind where he was before he's starting that. But by keeping that presence of mind that I know that I have the money for this, I know that I want to continue, then continue to make that sort of teching up, use the actual money that you have, as opposed to just going into full, oh, I got to deal with this and I'm not going to do anything else until I do. So excellent there, but obviously a bit of a fail in terms of the just initial defense of that. Good spread on the troops, only actually lost one Marine, as I said, to the Banelings themselves, but then moving down the ramp after he actually saw a bunch of Lings streaming in, you only actually saw like 6 or 8 Banelings hit that. To move down the ramp knowing that there were like 20 Lings down there, probably not, doesn't make the most amount of sense, wasn't probably the best position. Usually the Baneling bust happens as a way to open the door for a stream of Lings to come in behind it, and just not something that you want to be actually moving out into. He moves the command center back to his main base, which is a decision that I really like here. He was obviously planning on kind of taking a hidden expansion. One thing is, just funnily enough, it makes the Zerg player kind of go around looking for it. So as opposed to following up with any sort of pressure, he's actually out on the map looking for this command center, which he actually saw floating around here. People will often, if they've got that sort of thing, still try and land in the natural. But if we're not saturated in the main yet, which he is not, once you take all these mules out, he's certainly not, then there's no reason not to just bring that in where it's going to be completely safe, get the mules from it, get extra SCVs from it, and then as you approach saturation, which now that's pretty much where you want it to be, now he's moving down. So again, some pretty good decision making on that, where it was maybe a little spot. I guess the only thing that was really a big error was actually trying to move down the ramp. Otherwise, fairly decent. Even after this, even after all these losses, and there are 23 workers killed in that, as well as 43 units, but 35 units, or 35 now, 34 in the initial attack were actually lost. That represents 17 drones that the Zerg player did not make. So even though that was a really big loss, by having 2 bases out quicker, he's able to recoup that quicker. By making sure that he didn't stop his tech, he's able to actually get that out. Now, obviously, he's short on gas, but at least this infrastructure is there. At least we've got 2 medevacs out. Everything can be healed up. So despite that huge amount of damage, we're actually back on, not completely, but fairly close to even footing. 32 drones against 26 SCVs. Once you start adding mules in, and a single mule is worth approximately 73 drones, or a ret's worth of drones, then you know, you're on a lot more even footing. The Zerg probably feels like he's way ahead after that attack. He killed almost everything, but just because of the fact that he didn't have the expansion down, that he spent so many units to actually do it, there just wasn't much there. And then behind this, he's going into a spire. which is, again, going to take a lot of him building up some money, and it's going to take him a while for this tech to actually come out. He is not mining off these two gases yet, and we can see now the drone count has kind of stopped and halted, and we're completely back to where, not where we should be, but on par with the SCVs, and then obviously the mules on top of that. So we're in a much better position now than we were. Now here again, I'll refer to initial positioning on things, that this is a little far away from the ramp, and you're not going to be able to kind of target things as they come up. You kind of want a little bit of a spread around these buildings so that these units can actually hit things as they come up the ramp. The bunker is there, but there's nothing in the bunker, so it's not really providing that much benefit other than to kind of backstop the supply depots. It's not actually walled off, as we see right there. So with everything in this place kind of clumped up, and then salvaging that so that I guess he can get closer, but eliminating some of that. We know that there's still banelings out there, there's still a bunch of lings out there, and as they come up and destroy that, this is kind of one of those situations I meant when I said you should really review your replays and look for times that you could have lost the game. If instead of just sending up a handful of banelings and taking those two buildings out, he actually sent the whole thing up, the first few would break through, and the rest would simply make contact on this entire army that was in a ball right here and is still not really spread out. It's in a ball now behind the barracks at least, but there's not a lot of space to maneuver. There's no spread here. If the banelings actually connected on this, they'd really connect on virtually everything, and then the lings would just be streaming around, and you'd be in the similar sort of situation. So you want to make sure that your initial positioning and spread is good. We even have siege mode on the tanks, but they're sitting here at the top of the ramp not being sieged. So when this second wave comes in, again, he's just not bringing enough. We make the same mistake again of moving down the ramp, and we can see what the effect of this army would have been had he simply moved the entire thing up. And we can see it's not pretty. So if he had just done that right away, if he had just moved that up on the first attack, as opposed to spending about 8 banelings each time to take things out, then he could have wiped that out a long time ago. He would have had a lot more lings. He probably would have had banelings left to completely deal with these SCVs. So beware of times that you could have lost the game, even though obviously he didn't. Then, you know, it's something that you obviously want to be improving in your play. The main base is now getting close to mined out. We do have the next orbital here, obviously looking to move down, but the little Zergling is a bit in the way. The Zerg player is just really stagnated on what he's doing. The Spire's been up for a while, but no upgrades have been going on there. Because of how many banelings he's actually been morphing in, it's really hurt his own tech path, because he's using gas so much that it's very hard to switch into that. So this is just not really optimal play or anything close to it by the Zerg player at all. But I also feel it's just a bit lower than the level that the game is. Even in the silver level, I expect slightly better kind of resource management than this. Even with the mutas coming out, 5 of them come out. What's that going to do to anybody? We know that there are Marines around here. He was even able to see earlier that there were a couple of missile turrets around now. Some of them, like here, maybe not in the best position, but this is fairly well defended. So the Mutalisks are not really going to do anything. He kind of wanders around with them a little indecisively for a while. He's only got 6 out on the field, so it's not like he's going to be able to do a massive amount of damage, even if the missile turrets weren't actually there. In terms of workers, we're down at 30 drones, so he kind of stopped making them at about 32 and has just never added any more on, while the SCV count has continued to climb. So just shows again, even when you are down in the game, don't stop just producing normally. Don't stop teching up. Don't stop just improving your economy. Even if you had took a screenshot when he had 4 or 5 SCVs left and say, yeah, in about 15 minutes he'll be on 3 bases, that wouldn't make a lot of sense to a lot of people. It would seem like that game should just kind of be over, but you can recover, particularly when you know that your opponent has invested as much into the attack as you lost during the attack. And that was almost the case in this. I think we had 23 workers lost compared to 17 that weren't made because of what the Zerg player was doing. Again here, initial positioning could be a little better, but I like the idea that the tanks are going to be spread out in different positions. I think they're a little too wide for each other. You'd generally like to see them at least in their own range so that they can kind of both be firing in an area. But look at this, just spreading out into separate little clumps. Each of them kind of supported, stimming up a group to take a look and pick off some of the banelings as they come in. They're going to land on a tank first, land in different groups, pulling back small groups, that tank behind, just pulling back, and it's not because of absolutely crazy APM. That was a pretty decent job, but let's take a look. Terran player with kind of a 74 APM, obviously spiking up during that, but it's not like we had Marine King Prime type micro there. It was just good planning. He knew that obviously that's the type of army that he was going to be facing, so he just dealt with that as it came and spread everything out ahead of time. If you don't have the APM to do it in the fight, then you want to be doing it ahead of time. You know that he's going to attack into it, so being in those groups as opposed to splitting them out meant that he could grab a couple of the groups and stutter step them back, and that really made the difference in that fight. If it was all balled up, that was a complete Zerg win. Because it was not balled up, he ends up with this handful of Marines left, and with these medevac support that are basically full energy, he knows that he can really go out and make a strong push against this. Now, at this point, his economy is good enough that he really should be producing off everything at all times. There has been a little bit of a lax medevac making at some points during this. I think he's probably, let me see if he is queued up. I don't think he is. So that's fairly decent there. We're getting close to using all the minerals, obviously dropping mules. Got a few energy there, a bit of energy there. Could drop about 4 more. But as he moved in, there was just nothing that the Zerg player could really do anymore. He was just kind of streaming some lings out. This entire Spire tech, I'll just replay because I know it will bother some people if I didn't catch the actual end of the game. But as he pushes out, he kind of knows that's probably it. There is a 3rd base hidden down here, but there's literally nothing with it. This is just a 300 mineral paperweight right now for the Zerg player. So as he kind of went back and just regrouped, he probably had some concept that, hey, I just took out all these lings. He drops a force down here, sees there's 2 more Mutalisks, takes them out, gets all these workers here on the gas, and just the absolute inability to deal with this drop. He literally does not have an army capable of killing these 7 Marines, so why not just push to the front? Stims a little early, but comes in, medevacs, plenty of them to heal that up. There's basically 1 for every 2 Marines out there, and it gets called a noob for basically a pretty good recovery. So overall, really good way to kind of keep his eye on the prize and know that he had to continue to tech up, continue to build his economy. He didn't panic and try and just go all in against him or anything like that. You often do want to just do an economic recovery against that. And because the Zerg player did not continue with his economy and did not get enough gas, did not expand enough after that, ends up just losing this game. And a lot of that is keeping your cool while those attacks are happening, continuing to make buildings, continuing to make workers the entire time, continuing to make units the entire time, as opposed to just getting sucked into the micro. And ultimately comes out on top here due to that. Keeping the cool head, and then making sure that your positioning, once he did actually go out onto the map, his positioning was really good. In his base, it could have obviously been a lot better. But in both of those cases, of the real Baneling bust. It probably could have been prevented almost completely by just making sure that there's a pre-spread up top, making sure that that bunker was actually full, making sure the tanks were sieged, and things like that. But overall, a great recovery and a great comeback by the Barcode Terran player. Thanks for watching, everyone. Hope that helps.